Narcissists are experts in the art of creating an illusion of control, and one of the key methods they use to maintain that control is through the strategic manipulation of people's perceptions of reality. This manipulation is not always overt or aggressive. It is often subtle, insidious, and designed to make others doubt themselves, their beliefs, and their own worth. By controlling the narrative and manipulating the way others see themselves, the narcissist ensures that they maintain power and dominance over those around them. This manipulation is an essential aspect of the narcissist's survival strategy, as it helps them protect their fragile self-insect while keeping others dependent on their approval and validation. One of the primary ways narcissists manipulate others is through selective truth-telling. They carefully choose what information to disclose and when, in order to present themselves in the most favorable light. This selective sharing of information creates a distorted version of reality, one in which the narcissist is always portrayed as the hero, the victim, or the most deserving person in any given situation. The narcissist will often tell partial truths, twist facts, or even lie outright, but the key is that they control the flow of information in such a way that they maintain the upper hand. By controlling what others know, the narcissist can shape their perception of events and people to suit their own needs. This strategy ensures that others are never able to fully grasp the complexity of the narcissist's behavior, as they are constantly being fed a skewed version of the truth. In addition to selectively controlling the flow of information, narcissists are also highly skilled at gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation that causes the victim to doubt their own perception of reality, memory, or sanity. Narcissists use gaslighting to create confusion and uncertainty in their targets, which makes them more vulnerable to manipulation. By denying events that actually occurred, contradicting the victim's version of reality, or insisting that the victim is imagining things, the narcissist erodes their target's confidence and self-trust. Over time, the victim begins to question their own judgment and may even feel as though they are losing touch with reality. This sense of confusion and self-doubt keeps the victim dependent on the narcissist for validation and answers, ensuring that the narcissist remains the dominant figure in the relationship. Narcissists also use manipulation to control the emotional responses of those around them. One of the most common ways they do this is through emotional exploitation. They are experts at identifying the vulnerabilities of others and will exploit these weaknesses to gain an advantage. If a narcissist knows that a person is sensitive to criticism, for example, they may use that knowledge to manipulate the person into behaving in a way that benefits the narcissist. They might offer backhanded compliments, praise that is laced with condescension, or even outright insults disguised as concern. By triggering feelings of inadequacy or self-doubt, the narcissist forces their target to seek their approval and reassurance, thus maintaining control over their emotion. The narcissist thrives on the emotional dependence of others, and by keeping people in a state of emotional turmoil, they can continue to hold power over them. Another powerful tool in the narcissist manipulation toolbox is the use of triangulation. Triangulation occurs when the narcissist introduces a third party into the relationship dynamic in order to create confusion, competition, and jealousy. For example, a narcissist might compare their partner to another person, highlighting the other person's qualities in a way that makes the partner feel inferior. This tactic is designed to create insecurity and self-doubt in the victim, making them feel as though they are not good enough. It also shifts the focus away from the narcissist's own flaws as the attention becomes centered on the victim's perceived shortcomings. Triangulation can also be used to pit people against one another, creating conflict and division where there was none before. By creating a sense of competition or rivalry, the narcissist ensures that others remain focused on trying to earn their approval rather than questioning the narcissist's behavior or motives. Narcissists also use intermittent reinforcement to manipulate and control those around them. This psychological technique involves rewarding a person's behavior unpredictably, creating an emotional roller coaster that keeps the victim hooked. For example, the narcissist might intermittently give praise, affection, or attention, but only when the victim behaves in a way that pleases the narcissist. These moments of validation feel rewarding and are often followed by periods of neglect, criticism, or emotional distance. The inconsistency of the narcissist's behavior makes the victim desperate for the next positive reinforcement, causing them to constantly seek approval and validation from the narcissist. This creates an unhealthy cycle of dependence where the victim feels as though their self-worth is contingent on the narcissist's approval. The narcissist's manipulation also extends to their ability to create a false sense of intimacy or connection. They often use charm and charisma to draw people in, making them feel as though they share a unique and special bond. This can be particularly powerful in romantic relationships, where the narcissist may shower their partner with affection and attention at the beginning of the relationship, only to withdraw it once the victim has become emotionally invested. By creating a sense of closeness and trust, the narcissist establishes control over the victim's emotions, making it more difficult for the victim to break free from the relationship. The victim may feel as though they are losing something precious or that they cannot survive without the narcissist's love and validation. This false sense of intimacy ensures that the narcissist can continue to manipulate the victim, using their emotional connection as leverage. Ultimately, the narcissist's need for control is driven by an intense fear of vulnerability and exposure. They cannot tolerate being seen as weak, flawed, or imperfect, and so they manipulate others to maintain the illusion of strength and superiority. By controlling the perceptions of those around them, the narcissist is able to avoid facing their own insecurities while also ensuring that others remain dependent on them for validation. This manipulation is not just about gaining power, it is about protecting their fragile self-imagining and ensuring that they never have to confront the reality of their own vulnerabilities. Narcissists often rely on a series of covert and overt tactics to manipulate those around them, and one of the most destructive tools in their arsenal is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which the narcissist systematically undermines the victim's perception of reality. It is a method of emotional abuse designed to make the victim question their own memories, thoughts, and experiences. Over time, this constant distortion of reality can lead the victim to lose confidence in their ability to trust their own mind. It is an insidious and powerful technique that narcissists use to assert control and maintain dominance, particularly over individuals they see as a threat to their power. The narcissist's use of gaslighting is often subtle, starting with small, seemingly insignificant lies. These lies might begin as little discrepancies. Things like denying a conversation that took place or insisting that a particular event never occurred. At first, the victim may brush it off, dismissing it as a mistake or a misunderstanding. However, as the narcissist continues to deny reality and manipulate the truth, the victim begins to doubt their own memory. The narcissist will frequently accuse the victim of being forgetful or overly sensitive, which causes the victim to feel confused and uncertain. This confusion is key to the narcissist's strategy, as it creates a sense of doubt that makes the victim more reliant on the narcissist for validation and clarity. Over time, the narcissist's gaslighting becomes more intense as they begin to manipulate the victim into believing things that are clearly false or contradictory. For example, the narcissist might deny their own actions, even in the face of clear evidence, and insist that the victim is simply imagining things. They may manipulate situations to their advantage, creating a scenario in which the victim is left questioning their own perspective. The narcissist may also use other manipulative tactics, such as playing on the victim's insecurities or exploiting their emotional vulnerabilities to further weaken their sense of reality. This leads to a gradual erosion of the victim's self-confidence as they become more and more unsure of what is real and what is being fabricated by the narcissist. The power of gaslighting lies in its ability to distort the victim's reality over time. As the narcissist continues to feed the victim false information, the victim begins to internalize the belief that they are incapable of understanding the truth. They may feel as though they are losing their grip on reality, leading them to rely more heavily on the narcissist for guidance and support. This makes it easier for the narcissist to maintain control as the victim becomes increasingly dependent on them for validation and understanding. The narcissist feeds off this dependency as it ensures that they remain in a position of power. One of the most damaging aspects of gaslighting is the emotional and psychological toll it takes on the victim. Constantly questioning one's own perception of reality is incredibly exhausting and destabilizing. The victim may start to feel isolated as they struggle to make sense of their experiences and find it difficult to trust anyone else, including themselves. The narcissist's manipulations can cause the victim to feel like they are losing their mind, which can lead to feelings of anxiety, depression, and despair. This sense of helplessness is exactly what the narcissist wants, as it creates a power imbalance, where the narcissist holds all the control and the victim feels powerless to escape the cycle of manipulation. Gaslighting also has a profound effect on the victim's relationships with others. As the narcissist continues to manipulate their perception of reality, the victim may begin to distance themselves from their support network. They might feel embarrassed to talk to friends or family about what is happening, as they fear they will not be believed or understood. The narcissist may even plant seeds of doubt about the victim's relationships, suggesting that friends or family members are conspiring against them, or that they cannot trust anyone outside of the narcissist. This isolates the victim further, making them more reliant on the narcissist for emotional support and validation. The narcissist's ultimate goal is to ensure that the victim becomes so disoriented and isolated that they have nowhere to turn but back to the narcissist, reinforcing the cycle of control. The long-term effects of gaslighting can be devastating, as the victim's sense of self and their ability to trust their own instincts can be permanently damaged. In some cases, the victim may come to believe that they are truly the problem, internalizing the narcissist's manipulations and questioning their own worth. This creates a lasting sense of confusion and self-doubt that can take years to recover from, if recovery is possible at all. Narcissists are particularly adept at exploiting this vulnerability, using it to maintain dominance over their victim for as long as possible. The damage caused by gaslighting is not just emotional or psychological, it can also have physical consequences, as the stress and anxiety caused by prolonged manipulation can lead to sleep disturbances, physical illness, and a general decline in overall well-being. Narcissists employ gaslighting as a strategic tool to undermine the confidence and autonomy of those around them. By making the victim question their own reality, the narcissist is able to maintain control and keep the victim in a position of emotional dependence. This tactic is particularly effective because it doesn't rely on brute force or overt threats. Instead, it slowly chips away at the victim's sense of self, making them more malleable and susceptible to further manipulation. The narcissist's ability to distort reality is what makes gaslighting so dangerous. It undermines not just the victim's perception of the world, but also their sense of identity, leaving them vulnerable to the narcissist's influence and control. Narcissists employ a variety of tactics to manipulate others, with one of the most prominent strategies being the undermining of an individual's sense of self-worth. This approach is rooted in the narcissist's deep-seated insecurity and fear of being exposed for what they truly are. Since narcissists derive their sense of value from the admiration and validation they receive from others, they are constantly looking for ways to maintain this validation. If someone, particularly someone strong and confident, threatens this source of affirmation, the narcissist will engage in tactics designed to strip away that person's confidence and self-esteem. The more they can make others doubt themselves, the more they can exert control over them. This tactic of undermining others is often subtle, operating in ways that are difficult to immediately recognize. One of the most common methods narcissists use is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation in which the narcissist makes the victim question their own perception of reality. They might deny things that were said or done, twist facts, or even outright lie in ways that confuse the person they're targeting. The goal is to make the victim feel as though they are losing their grip on reality, that they cannot trust their own thoughts or feelings. Over time, this undermines the victim's confidence and self-trust, rendering them more susceptible to the narcissist's control. Narcissists also tend to belittle and dismiss the achievements, ideas, and feelings of others. They do this because they cannot stand anyone else receiving attention or recognition. The narcissist sees themselves as the center of attention, and when someone else stands out, it threatens their sense of superiority. They will often minimize or downplay the accomplishments of others, even in subtle ways. For example, they might mock or trivialize an achievement, offer backhanded compliments, or quickly change the subject when someone else is speaking about their success. This is not just an expression of jealousy, but a calculated attempt to make the other person feel insignificant, thereby reinforcing the narcissist's inflated sense of importance. Another tactic narcissists use to undermine others is guilt tripping. Narcissists often make others feel responsible for their emotional state, manipulating them into believing that their behavior or actions are the cause of the narcissist's unhappiness or dissatisfaction. By instilling feelings of guilt, they make others feel as though they owe them something or that they are obligated to keep the narcissist happy in order to avoid conflict or disappointment. The narcissist's ability to control others through guilt is tied to their deep need for validation. When they can make others feel guilty, they create a dynamic where the victim constantly works to meet the narcissist's needs, thus securing the admiration and validation that the narcissist so desperately craves. Shifting blame is another key way that narcissists undermine others. They are never willing to accept responsibility for their own actions, especially when those actions cause harm to others. Instead, they will deflect blame and project their own faults onto someone else. This is not just an attempt to avoid accountability. It's a way for the narcissist to maintain their sense of superiority and control. By making others feel as though they are the ones at fault, the narcissist can preserve their own image as flawless and infallible. This tactic creates confusion in the victim, who starts to doubt whether they are truly at fault or if they are being manipulated. Over time, the narcissist's constant shifting of blame can erode the victim's self-esteem and make them feel inadequate. Narcissists also rely on idealization and devaluation as a way to manipulate others. At the beginning of a relationship, a narcissist may idealize the other person, showering them with attention and praise. This period of idealization can make the person feel special, desired, and validated. However, once the narcissist has established control and the person has become emotionally invested, they begin the devaluation process. The narcissist shifts from adoring the person to criticizing, belittling, or dismissing them. This shift can be disorienting for the victim, who may struggle to understand why the narcissist's behavior has changed so dramatically. The narcissist's devaluation of the other person causes them to feel as though they are not worthy of love or respect, which ultimately makes them more dependent on the narcissist's approval. This constant cycle of idealization and devaluation can be exhausting, leading the victim to question their worth and feel trapped in an emotionally abusive relationship. One of the most damaging aspects of the narcissist's manipulation is their ability to make others feel as though they are never enough. Narcissists have incredibly high, often unrealistic expectations for the people around them. No matter how much effort is put into meeting these expectations, it is never enough to satisfy the narcissist. This creates a constant sense of inadequacy in the victim, who feels as though they are always falling short. The narcissist uses this feeling of inadequacy to maintain control, as the victim becomes desperate to gain the narcissist's approval. The more the victim tries to meet the narcissist's demands, the more they are pushed to the brink of exhaustion, leaving them vulnerable to further manipulation and control. The narcissist's ability to undermine others' self-worth is a key component of their need for power and control. They create an environment in which their validation becomes the most important thing, and in order to maintain that validation, the people around them must be kept off balance. By constantly attacking the self-esteem of others, the narcissist ensures that their sense of superiority remains unchallenged. The more they can make others doubt themselves, the more power they gain over them. This dynamic is central to the narcissist's strategy for maintaining control in their relationships, and it is one of the most insidious forms of manipulation. It leaves the victim emotionally drained, confused, and disconnected from their own sense of self, making them more susceptible to the narcissist's control. Fear is one of the most powerful forces that drives the narcissist's behavior. This fear is not always immediately obvious, as narcissists tend to project an air of invulnerability and self-assurance. However, beneath the surface, there is a constant underlying terror, the fear of exposure. The narcissist is profoundly afraid of being seen for what they truly are: fragile, insecure, and deeply vulnerable. To shield themselves from this fear, they construct elaborate facades of superiority, entitlement, and control. They create narratives about their lives that present them as exceptional, deserving of admiration, and immune to failure. These stories, however, are not simply embellishments. They are survival mechanisms The narcissist relies on these illusions to protect themselves from confronting the truth of their own insecurity. This fear of exposure manifests in a variety of ways. The narcissist is terrified of being discovered as a fraud, as someone who is not as perfect or invincible as they appear. This fear is so deeply ingrained that it shapes nearly every interaction they have. When they feel that someone is beginning to see through their facade, their first instinct is to either manipulate that person into silence or remove them from their life entirely. This reaction is driven by the belief that if others see their vulnerabilities, they will lose their source of validation and the sense of superiority they cling to. For the narcissist, this would mean total annihilation. Losing the only identity they know, the only defense they have against the unbearable fear of worthlessness. The fear of exposure leads the narcissist to constantly seek control. Control for them is not merely about managing their environment or maintaining power, it is about managing the narrative around them. The narcissist needs to control the way they are perceived by others because they are unable to cope with any reality that contradicts their constructed self-image. To maintain this control, they will manipulate, deceive, and distort facts to make sure they always appear as the hero of their own story. If a narcissist can successfully manipulate how others perceive them, they can stave off their fear of being unmasked for just a little longer. This fear is what drives much of the narcissist's need to control the people around them. A narcissist will often go to great lengths to dominate relationships and environments, ensuring that they are never questioned or challenged. The narcissist thrives on admiration and dependency, and in order to keep others hooked on their illusion, they must keep them in a position where they cannot see the full picture. The narcissist will employ tactics like gaslighting, guilt tripping, and emotional manipulation to disorient their target, forcing them into a position where they doubt their own perceptions and reality. This not only allows the narcissist to maintain control, but also protects their fragile ego from being exposed. The narcissist's fear of exposure is also deeply connected to their sense of superiority. In their mind, they must be seen as special or exceptional in order to justify their existence. This belief in their own superiority is a defense against their fear of being ordinary, insignificant, or inferior. To the narcissist, being seen as just like everyone else is akin to being invisible, a threat to their self-concept that they cannot bear to confront. They need to believe that they are better, smarter, or more capable than others, and they rely on others to reinforce this belief. When someone challenges or rejects this perception, the narcissist feels as if they are losing their grip on their identity, and this triggers a defensive response. When they encounter someone who threatens this narrative, someone who sees through their facade, or refuses to validate their sense of superiority, the narcissist reacts with fear and hostility. This person becomes a danger, not because they have any real power over the narcissist, but because they threaten the narcissist's carefully constructed illusion. The narcissist's first instinct is to discredit or undermine the person who dares to challenge their self-image. They might try to devalue them, insult them, or engage in passive-aggressive behavior to put them back in their place. If the threat persists, the narcissist will often discard the person entirely, cutting them off to protect themselves from any further exposure. The narcissist's fear of being exposed also affects their relationships with others. In a relationship with a narcissist, it is common for the narcissist to demand constant reassurance and admiration. The need for validation is driven by this fear of exposure. The narcissist cannot stand the idea that someone might see them for who they really are, so they seek out constant praise and adoration to keep the facade intact. This is why the narcissist often seems insatiable in their need for attention. They require constant external affirmation to stave off the fear that they are truly insignificant. When this external validation is no longer forthcoming, the narcissist becomes anxious, angry, or even desperate to regain it. In many ways, the narcissist's fear of exposure is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Their constant need for validation and control often leads to behaviors that alienate others, making it more likely that people will see through their facade. However, the narcissist is so driven by their fear that they are often unable to recognize the damage they are doing to their relationships. The more they try to control others and maintain their illusion of superiority, the more they push people away. This only intensifies their fear of being exposed, and the cycle continues. Ultimately, the narcissist's fear of exposure is a reflection of their deep internal conflict. They are caught between the need to maintain a false image of themselves and the reality that they are, in fact, deeply insecure. This conflict drives much of their behavior, from their attempts to control others to their insatiable need for validation. The fear of being exposed for who they truly are, the vulnerable, insecure person they work so hard to hide, remains a constant presence in their life, pushing them to manipulate, deceive, and dominate others in a desperate attempt to preserve their fragile ego. Strong people, those who are secure in themselves, often represent a significant threat to narcissists. This isn't necessarily because the strong person is actively trying to challenge the narcissist or diminish their ego, but simply because of their presence. A strong person operates from a place of self-assurance with an internal sense of self-worth that is independent of external validation. This kind of strength is precisely what the narcissist fears. It forces them to confront the emptiness they feel inside, an emptiness that they continuously try to fill with admiration, attention, and control. At the core of a narcissist's behavior is a profound need to manipulate their environment to ensure that their self-image remains intact. Their whole identity is built around the need to be seen as special, unique, or superior to others. A strong person disrupts this illusion because their strength doesn't require external validation. Unlike the narcissist, who craves constant admiration and reassurance, the strong person finds their sense of worth from within. This self-sufficiency is something the narcissist cannot comprehend, let alone tolerate. The very idea that someone could stand confidently in their own sense of being without needing to be praised or admired is a direct challenge to the narcissist's need for control. In a relationship with a narcissist, the presence of a strong person is destabilizing. It forces the narcissist to acknowledge their own vulnerabilities and shortcomings. Narcissists are deeply afraid of being exposed for who they truly are, and the strong individual becomes a mirror reflecting the cracks in their facade. A person who knows their own value and does not need to seek approval from others stands as a stark contrast to the narcissist, whose entire world revolves around the validation of others. The narcissist's fear is that they will be seen for what they truly are, deeply insecure, constantly compensating for feelings of inferiority. Strong people don't need to prop up the narcissist's false sense of grandeur. And this absence of validation can feel like an existential threat to the narcissist. When a narcissist feels threatened, their response is often to try to regain control. In order to preserve their sense of superiority and dominance, they will employ various tactics to undermine the strong person's confidence, to make them question themselves, or to manipulate them into submission. This can range from overt control tactics, such as gaslighting, to more subtle methods of manipulation, such as guilt tripping or creating dependency. The narcissist's primary goal is to reassert their dominance and to make the strong person feel as though they are unworthy of the strength they embody. Narcissists do not want to be around someone who makes them feel weak or inferior. They want to surround themselves with people who will constantly affirm their false sense of superiority. One of the primary reasons the narcissist fears strong people is because they lack the tools to deal with true strength. The narcissist can only operate effectively when they are in control, and they know that a strong person will not easily be controlled. Strong individuals set boundaries, speak their truth, and demand respect. They don't cower in the face of manipulation or intimidation. To the narcissist, this is not only an inconvenience, but a direct threat to their authority. It's important to note that narcissists are not comfortable in relationships where they do not have the upper hand. They need to feel in control of every interaction and every aspect of their environment. A strong person refuses to give them that control, and as a result, the narcissist feels deeply vulnerable. Another reason the narcissist fears strong people is that they challenge the very narrative the narcissist has created about themselves. The narcissist constructs an image of themselves as being superior, exceptional, or even entitled to admiration and respect. A strong person, however, operates from a grounded sense of reality. They do not see the narcissist as a superior being, nor do they indulge in the narcissist's need for constant praise. Instead, they treat the narcissist as they would any other person, neither exalted nor diminished. This refusal to buy into the narcissist's inflated self-impingement is terrifying to them because it exposes the falseness of their constructed identity. It leaves them vulnerable, exposed, and without the constant stream of admiration they rely on to sustain their fragile ego. Furthermore, strong people tend to value authenticity and honesty. They are not easily manipulated or swayed by charm, flattery, or deceit. Narcissists rely heavily on manipulation and deceit to maintain control over others. So when they encounter someone who is immune to these tactics, it threatens their ability to maintain power in a relationship. The strong person's refusal to tolerate dishonesty or manipulation leaves the narcissist with fewer options for maintaining the narrative they've created for themselves. It forces them to either face reality or to double down on their tactics, both of which are uncomfortable and unappealing. The fear that the narcissist feels in the presence of a strong person is not just an emotional reaction, it's a survival instinct. The narcissist has built their entire life around maintaining control and projecting a false image of superiority. Strong individuals who are grounded in self-awareness and confidence make it impossible for the narcissist to maintain their facade. The narcissist knows that in the presence of such a person, their weaknesses will eventually be exposed, their manipulations will no longer work, and their need for control will be undermined. It is in this dynamic that the narcissist's true fear of strength becomes most evident. Now, when we talk about narcissism, we're not merely referring to someone who admires themselves in the mirror. No, it's far more insidious, more dangerous than that. Narcissism is a deep emotional need for control, for power, for validation from others. It is, at its core, a manifestation of profound insecurity masked by grandiosity. Narcissism is often misunderstood as an exaggerated form of self-confidence, but this is a misconception. At its core, narcissism is rooted in deep insecurity. The outward appearance of arrogance and self-importance masks a fragile internal self-esteem that constantly seeks validation from external sources. Narcissists rely on the approval of others to fill the void they feel inside themselves. This need for validation is not driven by true self-assurance, but rather by an ongoing fear of inadequacy and worthlessness. They cannot exist without the constant reinforcement of their inflated self-impeachment. This deep insecurity manifests in a variety of ways, particularly in how narcissists interact with those around them. While they may present themselves as self-assured, their self-worth is built on shaky ground. In many cases, this fragile ego is so tenuous that even small slights, perceived insults, or rejections can send the narcissist into a defensive, often aggressive, emotional state. In contrast to their outward appearance of confidence, their inner world is a constant battle to stave off feelings of failure and rejection. The more they seek external admiration, the more they reveal just how incapable they are of truly affirming their own value. The narcissist's insecurity is not always obvious to the outside observer. They are masters of creating a facade that makes them appear unshakably confident, even superior. However, this act of self-importance is often a compensatory mechanism designed to cover up their vulnerabilities. It is their way of coping with the intense feelings of inadequacy that they fear others will discover if given the chance. The narcissist's need for control stems from this very insecurity. They believe that by dominating others and manipulating their environment, they can protect themselves from facing their internal weakness. This insecurity can be traced back to early developmental experiences. Narcissistic traits often emerge as a defense mechanism in response to neglect, emotional abuse, or excessive admiration in childhood. A child who receives inconsistent or conditional love may develop narcissistic behaviors as a way to protect themselves from emotional pain. In this sense, narcissism is an emotional armor, a way for the individual to avoid confronting the vulnerability that comes with being truly seen and loved for who they are, instead of developing a healthy sense of self-worth based on personal achievements, values, and connections. The narcissist's sense of self is contingent on external validation. For the narcissist, no amount of admiration is ever enough. They may constantly seek praise and attention, but this is never about a genuine desire to improve or feel proud of themselves. It is about filling an empty space inside them, a space that can never be fully filled. The narcissist's need for adoration is insatiable because their self-esteem is fragile. They need constant reassurance that they are important, special, and superior. When they fail to receive this validation, their internal world begins to collapse, triggering feelings of anger, resentment, and deep self-loathing. In relationships, this deep insecurity manifests in the narcissist's tendency to control and manipulate others. They rely on the admiration of those close to them to maintain their fragile self-worth, and any threat to this admiration is seen as a direct assault on their very identity. The narcissist often surrounds themselves with people who validate their sense of superiority, even if it means isolating themselves from others who challenge their narrative. This dynamic can create a toxic cycle, where the narcissist demands more and more from their loved ones while simultaneously devaluing and discarding them when they no longer serve their purpose. The insecurity that underpins narcissism also leads to a lack of empathy. Since the narcissist is so focused on protecting their own fragile ego, they struggle to genuinely connect with others or to see things from their perspective. Their emotional energy is consumed by their need for validation, leaving little room for understanding or care for other people's feelings. The narcissist's emotional world revolves around their own needs and desires, leaving them incapable of recognizing or responding to the needs of others in a meaningful way. This need for external validation is not just a matter of ego, but a survival mechanism. The narcissist's sense of self is not internally stable. It relies on a constant stream of external feedback to survive. When this feedback is absent or negative, the narcissist feels as though their very existence is threatened. This is why narcissists can become so aggressive or vindictive when they feel slighted or rejected. It is not just a blow to their pride, it is a blow to their identity, to the very core of who they believe themselves to be. In this way, narcissism is not a sign of strength, but of weakness. The narcissist's outward display of self-importance is a shield, protecting them from the pain of feeling insignificant. It is an attempt to create a false sense of security, a way to project strength and invulnerability, when in reality, they are haunted by the fear of being unworthy. Behind every boast, every manipulative behavior, and every effort to control those around them lies an individual who is desperately trying to escape the internal turmoil of insecurity and self-doubt.